Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Michael Bidu. I'm from Vancouver. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Mind Therapeutics, a digital health company focused on digital therapies. I'm here to moderate a tremendous panel called Real-Time 3D, the Bridge to Healthcare Innovation, with three of the most respected professionals in our field, which is digital health and well-being. So we have Dr. Adam Gazzeley with us from San Francisco, Professor Albert Skip Rizzo from uh, Los Angeles, and we have Carrie from Embodied Labs here with us. I think what we would like to talk to all the creators and change makers in the world is that this whole area of healthcare and well-being, it's a tremendous opportunity. The whole industry, the wellness industry in the world, is about 4.8 billion trillion dollars. I'm sorry, and the healthcare industry, it's about 8.5 trillion dollars industry. We need innovators and change makers and creators to actually take advantage of what we can do together in this space. At the end of this panel, we hope that you'll understand where exactly you can focus your creative energies. We hope that the executives from all sorts of industries understand how digital health can actually help create better health outcomes and affect change and social impact. And we also hope that in the end, you'll get very inspired about this, our conversations. With that being said, I'm going to pass the microphone to Adam Gazzeley in San Francisco. Adam, it's all yours.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me and all of us here. I'm excited to dive into this great topic for an hour. I guess I'll get us kicked off by introducing myself and then showing you a video of some of the work that I've been doing. I am a professor of neuroscience in the neurology and psychiatry department at the University of California, San Francisco. And I'm also the co-founder of a company called Achille Interactive, which is building therapeutic video games. Just to give you a little context, 15 years ago, I was using functional brain imaging to study attention and memory in the brain and how we're very susceptible to influences from distraction and multitasking. That sounds sort of commonplace to say now, but back 15 years ago, we were still understanding that we are very sensitive to those influences, and it degrades our performance. And then, I guess 12 years ago, I decided to not just study the brain, but work on approaches to improve function. And I came up with this idea of building a video game that would harness our brain's plasticity. We have this natural inherent ability to improve our function when challenged. And the idea was that this could be distributed and scaled using modern technology and using the game mechanics that lead to immersion and fun would lead to better, more meaningful change in the brain, as well as more enduring change and compliance with the game. And so, long story short, I built this game with friends of mine from LucasArts. I'm sure everyone remembers LucasArts. And that game was called NeuroRacer. We spent 3 years studying it, and we published a paper in Nature showing, this is in 2013, showing that that game can improve the ability of older adults, not just to play the game, but their attention and their memory performance. We also recorded brain activity during gameplay to show the neural mechanism of those effects. And we showed some endurance of those effects 6 months and now 6 years later. My lab at UCSF is now a center called Neuroscape. And we take this idea of interactive experiences delivered through digital technologies to the next level, integrated with things like non-invasive brain stimulation and now psychedelics. Lots of things to talk about there. I'll conclude by talking about Achille Interactive, which is a company that was launched from that research I described on that first game called NeuroRacer. And Achille was started to take that game outside of the lab into the world of medicine. And so a large team of video game professionals from lots of AAA video game companies, artists, musicians, designers, programmers helped make that game a much better mobile game. That game is called EndeavorRx. The game has now been in over a dozen clinical trials, and most recently completed a phase 3 trial. That's a multi-site, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial with a video game to see if it can improve attention in children with ADHD. And last year, right in the thick of COVID, we got approval as a class 2 medical device. making it the first FDA-approved video game for any medical condition and the first digital treatment for children for any condition. And that game's indication is to treat inattention in children with ADHD. So I will pass it over and we'll show you a video, a little sneak peek of an FDA-approved video game, and we can take it from there. Thank you.
Imagine a medicine made up of pixels and play. Created with cognitive science and proven in clinical studies. A video game that's FDA approved.
That's what I'm talking about. Woohoo!
That invites your child to discover new worlds.
You did it! Nice!
Build their universe.
That mission was tough.
Capture mystic creatures. Boost past challenges. And unlock new characters.
Oh yeah!
All to create positive change. Introducing EndeavorRx. The first prescription ADHD therapy
Look at us, rocking it again.
delivered through a video game experience. Designed to work alongside your treatment plan
Hey, whoa! You were all round, and I was all woot. Awesome!
and proven to improve attention.
All right, good. Thanks very much, Adam. That was very exciting. So let's hear from Skip in Los Angeles.
Well, first off, Adam, I want to play that game. In fact, I think I need to play that game
You know it's good.
regularly. Well, hey, thanks everybody. I'm honored to be on this panel with this team. And my work began when I was working in a brain injury rehab center back in the late 80s, early 90s. I got very frustrated with the limited tools we had for brain injury rehab. And so in 1995, after integrating games into some of my clinical work, an old game you may remember on a Nintendo NES system called SimCity, which I think is the ultimate executive function training game, but that's a debate we can have over beers, Adam. But I left clinical work and started a lab at the University of Southern California, and it's been going since 1995. And over those years, we've designed, developed, and evaluated many applications for addressing ADHD, looking at autism, social skills, wide variety of physical and cognitive rehab applications. And probably what our lab is best known for is our work with PTSD, both the treatment and the prevention and assessment of PTSD using VR simulations. I'm going to show a clip here on that work that shows a patient's experience as they go through the application. And that work has evolved over 15 years. And now my mission is to take everything we've learned on the military funding in the area of trauma and in the other areas we've worked in, and kick it out of the lab and start to work more with private industry to get these things in the hands of users to make a bigger difference than just publishing a paper on it. We've had some success with the PTSD work. It's been distributed to over 100 clinical sites for the delivery of this type of exposure therapy. But I'll let the video do the talking now.
Welcome back to Tech for Good, where we shine a spotlight on life-changing technologies and the people whose worlds they transform. Now, 7 to 8% of the U.S. population experience post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, at some point in their lives. Already a very high figure, but for soldiers returning from war, that statistic is believed to be even higher. Here's how technology can help the veteran community.
I literally had not talked about that scenario for 10 plus years. Never thought about it. I avoided thinking about it. This time as we go through, we have a civilian population to worry about, and it's kind of hard for us because we have to judge between the civilian and military. Some of the things that I saw and some things I did just stuck with me.
Retired U.S. Marine Chris Merkel is about to return to war. A decade on from 3 tours in Iraq and 4 in Afghanistan, this time his front line is a virtual battlefield.
You start to feel like you're there, and then you see, like where I physically saw Iraq, how I remember it. In my mind, I could see that guy getting ready to shoot at us, and it's so intense.
This is BraveMind, a virtual reality exposure therapy program designed by psychologist Albert Rizzo to treat various forms of post-traumatic stress disorder. How traumatic is it for a patient to face these painful memories head on, to relive them through BraveMind?
When you tell people about it initially, they say, why would you make somebody go back and confront these horrific experiences that they had? Well, we do it because the science shows that this is an effective approach, that helping a person to confront and reprocess difficult emotional memories, but in a safe place, getting them to talk about things they haven't talked to anybody about, that is the path to healing.
Merkel says his time in service left him in a constant state of hypervigilance, leading to bouts of anger, depression, and insomnia.
People return, they're not a whole person when they return. It's not like a movie, it's not instantaneous, it's not glorious, it's very violent, it's very visceral.
And when traditional therapy failed to help his PTSD, he turned to the VR program to face the very memories he had been avoiding for years.
Contact front IED, left side.
If you activate this fear, this traumatic memory, but nothing bad happens, you're in a safe place with a supportive clinician, eventually that fear or anxiety extinguishes or habituates.
In his lab at the University of Southern California's Institute of Creative Technologies, Rizzo's team has developed 14 combat scenarios, building in the sights, sounds, vibrations, and even the smells of war.
The clinician has a control panel where they can adjust the lighting, the time of day, the number of people, where a bomb goes off, if a plane is flying over. So you can customize the experience moment by moment in real time for helping the person to go back to something that's relevant for them.
The BraveMind team hopes its tech can be used to treat many other instances of PTSD, not only that of returning soldiers, but those suffering trauma from other walks of life.
Certainly, we're going to be facing a wave of mental health challenges, specifically with healthcare providers on the front lines of COVID.
With his VR sessions behind him, Merkel is finding happiness again, volunteering in the veteran community. One of his initiatives, Waves of Valor, teaches returned service members to surf.
They're not thinking about their pain, they're not thinking about their depression, they're not thinking about the war. They just want to do for themselves. And the healing part is, it's surprising. It's not veteran to veteran, it's not therapist to veteran, it's community.
The VR just opens up a world of thought because it's a novel, different way of doing things, but it's opening up how people think about how we help people heal and get past trauma and other things.
BraveMind has pretty much saved my life in more ways than one.
Okay, so I just want to make an addendum to that. And that fellow there went on to get his doctorate in clinical psychology. That's how motivated he was to try to give back. And he's currently doing his internship up in Anchorage, Alaska, helping indigenous populations with substance use disorder and PTSD. So I'm very proud of that guy. And anyway, with that said, Carrie, I'm looking forward to seeing what you're doing now, because I've always been inspired by your work. So let's see.
Thanks. Well, good to be here. Hello, everyone in the audience. My name is Carrie Shaw. I'm the CEO and founder of Embodied Labs, and we are a company that's accelerating human understanding by embodying the perspectives of others, starting with the older adult population and the caregivers that take care of them. And so for me, my journey started as a high school student obsessed with missing school and winning the science fair. So I did cancer research for about a decade on different things related to microRNA and natural medicine, and got to college and realized that I sucked at biochemistry and multiple choice tests and weed out classes at UNC Chapel Hill. And then concurrently, my mom got diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease. So I actually dropped out of college for a time. I had my early midlife crisis. I don't know if anyone's seen Still Alice, but it came out about the same time my mom got diagnosed. And I thought, if this is my halfway point, I better start living life outside the lab. So I did go back to UNC, eventually became obsessed with global public health and healthcare at the population level. Joined the Peace Corps out of college, was mostly just avoiding being at home in a situation I had no idea how to deal with, as my mom was really facing her disease that was progressing forward and was quite confusing for me in my early 20s. And so as I was working through my job in the Peace Corps in the Dominican Republic, figuring out that learning a language was not something I was great at, I realized that teaching people health through storytelling and visual communication was a really good way around that challenge. And that's when I learned that there was a whole profession called biomedical illustration, or medical illustration, if you think about the people who draw things in textbooks and where that's evolved today with technology. And so today I went back to get a Master's of Science in Medical Visualization, was in between that in my 20s, finally at home with my mom, facing some of those fears of dealing with what it meant to be a full-time family caregiver. And I saw just what it means to have high turnover and low retention of our most valuable direct care staff that take care of us as we age, and began to see just what the world looks like that we're aging into. And that made me wonder, what should this world look like, and what's our role in creating that world to be a place that can help us overcome understanding what it's like to be someone else, to have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, yet to not let that define who we are, given that we're still a person with lived experiences and qualities that make us much more than just a physical change or diagnosis. So today, Embodied Labs creates experiences that are scientifically accurate and create embodied pathways for us to take on complex perspectives of others in order to accelerate better healthcare outcomes and quality of care. And I'll leave it at that. Let maybe the video roll that complements kind of where Skip's work left off. And I can't wait for a great conversation between the panelists today. Thanks.
Why is virtual reality an effective medium to train caregivers?
We're tricking our brains into perceiving that this is a real and lived experience. When we put on a VR headset, our minds become shaped by what we're seeing and doing in the headset.
It becomes a memory that you gained in a virtual world, but you can absolutely apply in the real world.
Exactly. That memory is oftentimes tied to emotion. It's one of the things that is also really special about an immersive training environment.
Today, Tanya Mazzolini, a manager of a front porch facility in Pasadena, is trying out the Frank Lab, developed as a response to increased isolation faced by seniors during the pandemic.
That was so sad. Oh, wow. You feel so bad for him.
Why haven't you returned my calls?
Dad, I don't think this is real.
I've never experienced anything that can put me in the shoes of one of my residents and know what they're feeling.
Do you think your technology will help normalize conversations about elder care, mortality, and aging?
We're all aging, and we statistically are going to experience some kind of change as we grow older that's going to impact the way that we interact with humans around us. And it just made me think about, the world I want to age into.
With her team, Shaw develops the various learning modules with the consultation of medical experts and the family members of people experiencing aging issues. Shaw says the team strives to create an interactive experience that is rooted in scientific accuracy. Through immersive technology, Shaw says she is hopeful that healthcare can be transformed for the better.
It takes, as few as 5 minutes to go through a module that can give you insight that might change your whole life.
Wow, that was just awesome, guys. Really. So you're absolutely killing it. Great personal stories and how using your creativity and imagination to actually change the world. Really, I have kind of goosebumps when I see this, and I've seen it before many times. So it's awesome. Okay, we're going to start the panel in just a few seconds, but before that, I would like the audience around the world to know that you can send your questions in the chat room, and we will try to do our best to answer a few of them at the end of the panel. We are dedicating about 10 minutes at the end of the panel to answer your questions and make sure that obviously you have some answers going forward. So with that being said, let's start the panel. I would start with the title that we promise here, which is how real-time 3D technologies using Unity can help us to bridge the healthcare innovation. So I would ask Adam, why do we need a bridge to healthcare innovation? And then Skip, you can probably give us a sense of how we're going to build this bridge, because you've been at it for more than 20 years in building the bridge between academia and industry. And then Carrie, when do we build that bridge? Has it started? And where are we going? What do you see the future going? So Adam, why do we need a bridge?
Great question. It's a big one. We could talk about that for an hour, and it can be answered in lots of ways. Healthcare needs solutions right across the board, but I'm going to just give a couple comments related to mental health care, since that's what all of us have been talking about and all of our work focuses on, but it's much bigger than that. But even within mental health care, we know that we've for 70 years have been trying to cure and help people who are struggling from these conditions of cognition, broadly defined, including our attention, our memory, our emotional regulation, how we regulate stress, how we feel empathy and compassion. And we have really tragically failed to do that. And everyone is aware of it. The burden globally is over 500 million people are suffering, what would be described as clinical conditions of the mind. But it's beyond that, and the burden is rising. If you look at our seniors, as Carrie mentioned, all the conditions of memory, attention, and associated dementia syndromes, and then our youth struggling with attention and depression and suicide. And I think it's very clear now that these problems are worse with COVID. So they were already bad, and they're worse now. So we need to it's critical that we have new solutions. And this idea that somewhere out there is this magic brain pill that's just going to fix our brains is a paradigm that we've been following for decades, and it has just not borne the fruit that we need. It certainly helped many individuals, but we're looking at global levels of suffering that are impossible to ignore right now. And the opportunity for us to leverage the advances in interactive experiences delivered through digital technologies, both the ones that everyone has in their pockets, like phones and tablets, but also these immersive technologies, is incredibly exciting. And it spans the gamut from diagnosis that can be done in the real life situations, monitoring people over time, and then therapeutics, which is some of the things we've been discussing. So for anyone that's listening to this that has skills in Unity and designing 3D immersive environments, there's an incredible opportunity to use those skills to do some real good. We have an incredible need right now. So I'll leave my comments there.
Good. So Adam, would you say that because of COVID and because of obviously the global nature of it, the social awareness of what we need to do, talking about mental health in particular, would you say that the digital technologies, video gamers of the world, and the whole community can make more of a social impact by focusing on initiatives that matter? What's your point on
Yeah,
that?
I think COVID will positively impact this field using a general term like digital health in several ways. The first is awareness. I think hopefully stigmas have been reduced a little bit because who's not suffering right now? Everyone's suffering in some way of the isolation, the separation from their normal work life, the death and suffering of people around them. So hopefully that's made a lot of the mental health challenges that people face more relevant to everyone. So that's the first thing. I'd say the second is that we are now more comfortable with digital technologies. We see, people at home or, everyone's just like what we're doing right now. So it's gotten into more people's lives. Seniors that might have otherwise not been exposed to technology, COVID has made that accessible to them. Doctors are now embracing for the first time, many of them, telemedicine, when clearly they could have done that a decade ago. So it's really opened that opportunity. And then the last thing I'd say is that it has increased the burden as well and the need, especially in children and seniors. Isolation, as Carrie mentioned, was always an issue for seniors. And now picture, you can't see your family, you're isolated. It's really tragic. And so I would say for those three reasons, decreasing stigma, increasing need, and an opportunity that people are realizing that technology has to really make an influence in our life beyond entertainment and communication, that is now very much in the zeitgeist. So from all those perspectives, although COVID has been tragic, I'm not trying to lessen that. I think in terms of this field, it will have a positive influence.
Perfect. Thank you. Skip, you maybe you can start with a little bit with how you build your own bridge, as in the institute that you're part of, as a collaboration between academia and the industry, and then give us a sense of how would a bridge of the future is going to look like using real-time 3D technologies.
Well, that's a pretty tall order there.
Well, bridges are big.
First off, just to springboard off of one of the stats that Adam presented about the 500 million people walking the planet with reasonable challenge of mental health that would benefit from therapy. The follow-on to that is fully 2/3 of those folks will never see the inside of a therapy office. So we have a lot of unmet need, and this is where, if you want to draw from the gaming industry and entertainment, maybe we can draw people into treatments that they can benefit from by delivering it in this format. I know with the PTSD work, we've gotten statistics where you present the traditional format done in imagination only versus the VR at the start of a randomized control trial. Folks know they're going to be randomized, but you say, if you had your choice, what would you pick? 76% would have picked VR. And that's pretty significant number. And there's a number of studies showing the same thing. So we have an opportunity to break down barriers to care by presenting treatment in a format that, yes, it's still hard treatment. It's not playing a game to get fixed, but still you got to focus and you got to engage. But we can engage people and we can draw them in ways that we might not otherwise. So how I see this going is, if I look at the past and how people have built simulations in this space, the best ones are always informed by a theoretical basis, stuff that people have known or have developed over the years using the real world and traditional formats, where there's a good theory to inform the development. And then you start from there. It's not like there's VR therapy that's going to magically fix people because it's in VR. You got to have that rudder. And so, in Adam's work, it's the neuroscience area. In Carrie's work, I don't want to speak too much for her, but I think it's in a psychosocial framework of general healthcare. In my work, it's always been look at areas in clinical psychology where we see a good theory and we see evidence, and then look for ways that we're going to enhance or amplify those effects. So, you have to understand what VR offers in terms of not just immersion, but creating a user experience that engages people with challenges they might not ordinarily face, or engages them in challenges that can be titrated to their need and pace them through a growth experience. There's just so many ways. I've distilled some of the core concepts to expose, distract, motivate, measure, and engage. And we can expose people to challenges or to things where they have unreasonable fears or where they have traumatic memories. We can distract people from acutely painful medical procedures by engaging them in a VR context. We can motivate people. This is one of my favorites because motivation was always a big challenge in my work in traumatic brain injury. Getting somebody who already has cognitive impairments and trying to push them to do the things that would help them to develop their skill again, their cognitive capabilities. But it's directly tackling the things they're bad at, and that's why I think Adam's work with ADHD, trying to herd a cat, basically with ADHD, and engage them. That's the fifth element, the engagement with something and promoting motivation. At the same time, we can measure everything that goes on in these worlds and get a baseline assessment, ongoing treatment change assessments, and so on. So the path, I think, is to be interdisciplinary, to get great folks in computer science and art and narrative working together with clinicians to address these kinds of problems in novel and I think very engaging and measurable ways. So I think I see that as the path, and I see that as like exponentially improving as the technology now has caught up with the vision. I mean, if you look at the kinds of stuff we were using in the 90s, it was really Stone Age. The technology has caught up. We've got a good scientific base that gives us that rudder to know what areas are good and what areas people have tried and it's not so good. I think it's going to continue to evolve in this interdisciplinary way, and I'm very hopeful for the future.
Good. Thanks very much, Skip. So, Carrie, the question for you is, when should we build this bridge? I mean, you and many like you have started. We know that in the VR, AR, XR space, we have seen now technology companies evolving in the last, 5-7 years or so, and Embodied Labs, it's part of that movement. Yet, I think there's a lot more room, as Adam suggested, that the unmet need to improve access to healthcare and improve the delivery of healthcare with new technologies. It's something that we absolutely need to go. And again, the need is absolutely the need for better support and better healthcare is out there. What do you see? Like, when is the time to build that bridge, you think, and why do you think that?
Yeah, when you asked me that question, I thought about like a chasm. So if either side of my hands are the sides of the chasm, and it's just real deep down there, and we're building the bridge. We are building the bridge now, and it's a wide bridge, so it can fit a whole lot of people. And as creators, we need to be running across that bridge past where it exists, and then expecting that we're going to build it under us as we go. Maybe we take a jump and we work out the pieces and make sure there's something to land on. Or worst case, there's not, and then you kind of just respawn and start at the beginning again. So the chasm's not as scary as it really sounds. Now is the time to imagine what we want to see. And for all of us who are, whether we're healthcare experts, whether we're artists, creators, video game designers, whoever we all are part of the healthcare system. We all need health. We all receive health. We know the people around us that we love have the same needs. And I think it gives us power to come from that perspective of outside in to build the bridge, like Skip was saying, together with all of these different perspectives. And so, I mean, for me and for Embodied Labs, it was literally this pair of goggles that I was putting on my mom's caregivers, where I said, I didn't want to explain what she was seeing in words over and over. I said, just put these on, and don't forget to always walk on the left side so she doesn't crash into the door, or come from the right so you don't scare the crap out of her. And this is why she won't eat half her plate of food. You've got to rotate it at mealtime, or she's not going to finish it. But then I thought, well, I want to practice having an end of life conversation and experience before I do that for the first time. And I want to practice what it's like to take my mom's keys away before I have to do that in real life. Or manage really challenging care conversations that lead sometimes to families never speaking to each other again because they're not handled well, all the way to things like de-escalating someone who's agitated, like my mom was, and doing that in VR before it led to her falling down and going to the emergency room because my real life practice for the first time just wasn't good enough. And so I imagined, from just these taped up goggles that look really silly, what it could be like if we had more, if we had tools available that could accomplish these goals. And for me, it wasn't about the technology. I think the power of immersive in whatever form it is the why. Like, what problem is it uniquely solving that you're imagining and you're wishing for? I think to build the bridge, it takes wishing for the bridge, mustering up whatever that bridge looks like, and then running after those ideas and assuming there's going to be something you've built beneath you to catch you and keep us all moving forward.
Cool. So, I mean, we know from the World Health Organization that about 4 billion people don't actually have access to healthcare. And so that's about half of the population of this planet, which is insane when you think about it. In a way, to your example, Carrie, and I've seen you using the same example, which is so telling. What do we say to people who, can only see half of the reality, or they don't see the bridge that we need to build? What would be your advice to all these naysayers or people who are not quite convinced that we need to use digital technologies in the future to build the bridge?
I think it's a question of what scales and when, and how do we build a bridge to the bridge that scales. So, today it is hard to get a VR headset on every person's head in even the best first world places to accomplish goals that we've talked about here. I think there's steps towards that. There's levels of immersion. There's tools that we know we can use to start taking us further along and look at accessibility as a continuum where more people can be involved at different levels of what that continuum is. So I think making fully immersive experiences completely accessible to the world, that world that doesn't have access even to some of the most basic needs in healthcare. It will take some time, but maybe that's something we should be imagining that we solve, and how fast can we cut that time down to make it faster to get there and make these things available.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so before we go to the next couple of questions, I will ask the audience again to send questions in the chat room. We'll dedicate the last 10 minutes to answer your questions. I see that there are a few very good questions in the chat, but we need more if you have more. We have about 20 minutes to go to the end of our panel. So let's go to another set of questions. And we'll start with you, Adam, but Skip and Carrie, please jump in. This is a conversation. We don't have to do it kind of one at a time. Please feel free to interrupt each other and make your point. So the question is, we have a lot of students, a lot of academics in the audience from around the world. We have video gamers, visual effects folks, animation engineers, and digital creators and storytellers. So how should they use their talent to actually start building innovative products in health and healthcare? that's one of the questions that, here in Vancouver, we have quite a few video gaming companies, maybe 100 or so, and 60 animation and visual effects companies. And when I talk to the industry, they look at me like I'm from a different planet. Like, why would we actually even do this? And what's the opportunity? Like, it's the industry, it's healthcare ready for us. Yeah. The talent is there, but how do we actually convince them? So that is the question. Let's start with Adam.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's slow moving, but I think that the field is changing now. And I often get asked this question of, what is Achilles' most valuable intellectual property? Because we have all these patents around our video games and a medical device. And I would say our most valuable property, that we have, the most valuable asset we have, is our team. And meaning that what we've managed to do over the last decade is build a interdisciplinary team of people from the video game world. So artists, musicians, programmers, usability experts, storytellers, that then work with people in the healthcare world, that might be psychologists, cognitive scientists, other neuroscience professionals, and really listen to each other, not just work together, but respect each other and create something that neither group could do on their own. And that is hard to do, but it's so valuable. And we have the same team at Neuroscape. It's our biggest asset, because all the rest of the details you could figure out if you have a team that really is representing multiple different fields and can listen to each other and work together. And I believe that other companies and other academic groups are now wrapping their head around that reality. It wasn't very long ago when scientists could be like, oh, I could do this all on my own, I'm smart. And no, you can't. It's gonna stop. And it's like the oldest story in the book, that you have great ideas, but you really underestimate the skills that need to go into create a truly enjoyable and immersive experience. And so you think that that'll just come, for free. And it's not true. And that is shifting now. And it could be on the other side too, where you're a very experienced game developer in whatever domain, and you think that you could figure out the healthcare part of it, which is really complicated and nuanced, and populations are very complex, and then there's reimbursement and regulatory, and it's complicated. So my advice is to find someone on the other side of the aisle. So if people are listening to this and they are in the video game or immersive 3D environment creation world, they should be finding, and it doesn't have to be local anymore. It used to have to be local, but now look, we're not local and we're having this conversation. So it's a great opportunity to work with a scientist all the way across the country that's just looking for a smart developer that gets it, that wants to take their skills and use it to help people. So now, how do you connect all those things? How do you find that right person, I think, is another question, and one that I think a lot about. But just to summarize what I just rambled on about, my advice is to think in terms of teams. If you have these skills and you have the interest in using your abilities to help people in the way that we're talking about, you really, I think, would most benefit from teaming up with someone either in a company or an academic who's on the health or the science side of it, and work together to create something really special.
Cool. So I noticed that Skip was bouncing his head, and yeah. So Skip, what do you have to say about that?
Well, I was just going to say that Adam hit the nail on the head about how far you can go in an academic environment to build this stuff. Academic environments are great for testing new ideas and maybe integrating some new technologies here and there that's very experimental and doing the kinds of initial clinical work. But it's not the place to build out a productized system that's going to have great usability and be able to distribute it widely and all that. So, I'm just going to echo his point about, you really need this kind of collaboration across academics and the business world. And really, that's what I'm moving probably nearly 35-40% of my time into the industry rather than academia, to get some of these ideas out of the lab and things that we have good science for. But writing grants all the time to NIH or even the Army is not going to productize these things. We got lucky with a couple But one other thing I'd like to say in this area is kind of a vision. I remember approaching a couple of major game companies when we were building Bravemind, the PTSD stuff in the beginning, saying, "Look, you've got this war game. We could do a nice thing here and take some of this art, and we've got resources, and we could build something. It would be great PR for your company, to help veterans and so on." And now that, of course, the need is well beyond just veterans. And I heard crickets, in the room. So what if the government provided a tax incentive for game companies that spent a certain amount of their effort retooling their games for mental health purposes, partnering with universities, and make that tax credit substantial? So you've got a financial incentive to do this. I mean, harebrained scheme. What about Grand Theft Auto? Use that as the basis to develop training for de-escalation training with police officers, or mental health issues with police officers that we know is an unaddressed need in a population that is, assaulted by stress on a daily basis. So there's partnerships that are just waiting to happen, and we need to find ways to facilitate that, so that all this effort and money that goes into entertainment might serve double duty in the healthcare domain.
Okay. Well,
If I could just
go
riff on
ahead.
one small point related to Unity, which we haven't really talked about. I mean, this is like, I have no return for this promotion, but Unity has made a world of difference, and I think it's relevant to the conversation we're having now because it's democratized development. You don't need to have some proprietary software inside a big company, and we've used Unity in our laboratory. Achilles used it as well. So it's just a really great opportunity for someone to do a lot with resources that they can access from home. And I think that has really made a big difference. It has made a big difference to our team to be able to build and create, and also just throw stuff together and build, prototypes and pilot things. So I think that's worth mentioning, especially in the context of the Unity Summit, that this tool is perfect for the idea of someone that wants to try it out and take some of their skills and apply it to health. It's a great opportunity.
So, Carrie, in a way, you used all your vulnerabilities and the realization that, hey, you're not good at certain things, and then you started to dare to dream, so to say. And obviously, you use your mom as the main motivation to actually make change happen. What would be your advice again for those entrepreneurs or developers who want to go into our industry?
I would say dig even deeper into your vulnerabilities. And I think a lot of times our biggest strengths are also where we have our biggest weaknesses. So don't be afraid to look in the mirror or find that person that makes you look in the mirror. And, as much as I had whatever weaknesses 10 years ago, there's a whole lot of them today. And my team is here to tell me exactly what those are, and how they can fill in some gaps and push forward. So I think just not voicing what you're not good at, but when you feel defensive, drill down into that and say, what am I hiding here that like really just needs to come to the surface so we can get through this friction around ego and move forward and build something. And then I think also getting scrappy. So like what exists today, we can't change things all the time that are out of our control, as much as someone like me who, talk about weaknesses, loves to control like everything. Not possible, not helpful. So get scrappy and say like what's out there that you can work from and deal with and make something out of. Right now, the American Rescue Act, through the Older Americans Act, just released tons of funding to infrastructure, which for the first time, because of COVID, now includes home and community-based services. So how do our municipal and state governments now have channels of funding to maybe tap into things that they weren't initially thinking applied to momentum forward in areas like like we've talked about today. So just like go get in and look for things that might be able to be combined, kind of like you're in your kitchen making up a recipe as you go along. And don't be afraid to put something together that tastes nasty and makes you realize you're just like a terrible cook, which I am. That's about what I would say.
Okay, right on the dot. There you go. 10 minutes exactly to go to the end of our panel. So thank you for keeping an eye on the clock there, Carrie. We have a question here. I'm not sure why it disappeared because there was a question here on the screen. So if the guys in the green room can post that question or put it in the chat so I can read it. There was a question from, yeah, there you go. Charles Seguin. It seems like he's from the UK. Here's the question. How do you finance your innovative XR projects in this industry? I'm working from the UK where it is very difficult to get funding in the healthcare industry. So maybe Skip?
Well, funding is always, the answer to 99 of 100 questions is always money. Unfortunately, I hate to say it, but a little bit of sweat equity in building a prototype that inspires people. You're not building out the full-on deal, but you're building something that triggers somebody with the dollars, whether it's a foundation. I've been getting quite lucky with foundations where it's not as onerous writing grants, but they want to do some public good, and you show them a reasonable demo and explain where it can go from there. And that's been useful as of late in our group beyond just the regular traditional formats. But I think it's, even if you have a demo video, some videos are like hit records, they sell the album. I'm dating myself there, but I don't have an easy answer other than to say it's it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. You just got to keep, if you have passion, you keep banging away at it, and eventually you get lucky and somebody wants to help you.
I will try to attempt to answer Charles' question because I've been to London several times. I'm sure Adam was there likely. It's a tremendous ecosystem in London, in Oxford, in Cambridge. Digital media is quite doing very well. There's a lot of interesting studios in visual effects. So I think for Charles, you should actually look at the digital health accelerator with your national health system in the UK. They definitely provide that bridge between the industry, the startups, and the industry, the healthcare system in the UK. There's some grants available I'm aware of. But also try to get to all the creative industries associations in digital media, in VR, XR. There's a VR AR association, there's a London chapter. So there's different ways to kind of access the money. But I think it first starts with what exactly are you trying to build? And like Skip said, do a prototype for relatively, little money. And then you can kind of get into the space. That's why you have the accelerators and the incubators in all places in the world. And I'm sure there's one in London, and there's a few more in other parts of the UK. So I have another question here from James DeWitt. What does the patent landscape look like for VR assisted therapy? So probably Adam.
Well, patents and software patents are notoriously challenging. The last decade has proven that. I have several patents issued for, it doesn't necessarily have to be VR, but interactive media assisted treatments. But some of them are more VR, some are sort of device agnostic. But yeah, it's possible to create, these patents are basically methods of interactivity, at least the ones that I've created. Of course, there are hardware patents too, as well in the space that are possible. But a lot of the software that I've worked with is really charting out a path to say that this type of interactive experience that will be delivered digitally in some format, VR, otherwise, will lead to these benefits those are patentable methodologies that could then offer some protection around a new technology that you're starting a company. I will say it is challenging. My first patent, the patent behind NeuroRacer, the game that became EndeavorRx, took 7 years to get issued in the US, but now is issued in multiple companies. So you need to be able to slog through the legalities of pushing and trying to get examiners to understand that this is protectable property, but it's possible but hard.
So, Adam, can I maybe extend that question? Maybe some people in the audience would be interested in what it took you to actually get FDA approval. I think a lot of people in the video gaming industry and other industries are not aware that we have this new sector called digital therapeutics, software as therapy, and that FDA actually is now looking at the kind of digital therapies we're building and looking at an accelerated process and giving you an approval possibly within 12 months as opposed to 7 years. So where does the United States stand for?
Well, it's still a long, complicated process. It's an important one, because if we want doctors and patients and insurance companies to think about medicine as more than a pill, to think about medicine as a experience delivered through VR or other devices, we need to move it through the FDA, do the phase 3 trials, and get it approved. But it is a long, and it doesn't mean that's the only way to have impact. There's many tools that can be advanced through wellness spaces that are not making clinical indication claims, and there's lots of value there. I'm not saying that one is better than the other, they're just different ways. Achille and my interests have been to advance new medicine. And that really requires FDA approval, no matter how you slice it. And the process is long. Our FDA approval was particularly brutal because there was no other video game ever approved. And so the FDA considered it a de novo pathway. There's actually 2 pathways. One, de novo, and one is predicate-based, meaning that there's already something in the market that's in the same category. The de novo is a particularly long pathway. It took us a couple years after the research. So it is difficult, but I believe it is worth it. And I hope that our approval, as well as some others by other companies, may not be the same type of video game or rich interactive experiences that we're talking about here, but it still is mobile technologies. And, there are 2 pathways. There's the drug pathway and the device pathway. And all of this, if this doesn't seem like a device to you, you have to open your mind. This is considered a device by the FDA. And hopefully they'll be getting more and more comfortable with these as we show that they're low side effects and that they have efficacy.
Okay, thank you very much, Adam. So we have the last question here from Pete Swearingen. I hope I pronounced that correctly. It says, and this is for Carrie, what kinds of bias risks have you discovered and had to manage in your design efforts? So Carrie, if you can please keep this under 1 minute so we can leave the last minute for quick firing questions.
Yeah, I'll focus on one. There's a few ways to answer this. I think that the hardware itself, VR for scale, it doesn't have a build that is for everyone. So there's some statistics on nausea, particularly for women being high in wearing the headset. A lot of people have apprehension of putting on a VR headset, even when they know it's for best intended use cases. And I think there's also some questions around how does a VR headset work for certain kinds of people living with disabilities, whether that's cognitive impairment, whether that's, being hard of hearing and needing closed captioning to hear and understand the experience, or having low vision. So there's a lot just innate in the hardware design itself that creates some bias and risk, and ethical questions about how we engage people effectively in the technology. And then I think beyond that, just collecting biometrics through especially things like the Omnicept headset that HP has, where we're looking at all sorts of data points of how we move and talk and sweat and our heart rate. And we are capturing so much data. I think there was a Stanford paper recently that was published on this, that we're going well beyond knowledge bases and data sets that we've never really tapped into before. So there's a host of just this ethical questions that I think the leaders here on this stage and all of you in the audience should be thinking about and saying, well, you know, if I'm going to design for this technology, how am I going to be a part of owning that conversation in a way that moves the needle forward?
All right, so thank you very much all. We have about 10 seconds left. We want to thank Unity for inviting us to the Unity for Humanity Summit 2021. Goodbye, everyone, wherever you are, and dare to dream.